You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh. Tea. Earl Grey. Hot.
And I'm Ari, and I'm afraid of us, of what we might become.
And today we will be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes The Dauphin and Contagion. But first, the Kenobi trailer just came out.
I know. I literally just watched it again so that we could talk about it.
Yeah,
and
we just watched it right
my
now.
Goodness, I love it so much. I have been waiting for it for so long. Like, I know we talked about this an episode or two ago, but I love the prequels, and Ewan McGregor being Obi-Wan was one of the things that made me love the prequels, and I am so ready for this.
I think Ewan McGregor is one of the few things that basically, even if you hate the prequels, everyone agrees he's phenomenal. Like, when I think of Kenobi, I think of Ewan McGregor before I think of Alec Guinness.
Oh, for sure. Me too. Yeah.
Which Alec Guinness probably appreciates because he hated Star Wars.
Yeah, he sure did. There's that one letter that goes around every year on the anniversary that he sent it or whatever about how it's this stupid movie no one's ever going to hear anything about that he's written to his wife, and he can't believe he's out here in the desert and all this stuff. And it's like, I hate it so much. There's some guy no one's ever heard of named Harrison Ford also in the movie. And I don't know. It's a really funny thing that I see every year around, probably May the 4th. But yeah, it's funny. My very first reaction to the trailer was baby Luke pretending to podcast.
That's our job, Luke.
Baby Luke pretending to pod race is just the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. It is so cute. Like, I love it so much.
And it's supposed to remind you of Anakin, like,
Of
deliberately.
course, yeah.
Here's this little Skywalker kid out on the dunes of Tatooine.
Pretending he's a pod racer. Yep.
I'm going to bet money he says yippee in the show.
Yippee! It's my favorite Darth Vader quote. And it gave me strong vibes of that poster from when episode 1 came out, where you're looking at baby Anakin and he's standing basically in front of one of those like huts that Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru live in, and the shadow is Vader.
Yeah.
That was on my wall. Like, I loved that poster so much. I thought it was so cool. It lived on my wall for a long time.
The first thing that stood out to me in the trailer is the Inquisitors from Star Wars Rebels are in this.
Which I think is going to be really interesting. They keep bringing more and more of the animated characters like Cad Bane and such and Ahsoka into the live action stuff, which is so cool.
Well, it's Dave Filoni is basically running Star Wars at this point, and he got his start doing Clone Wars, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
The other thing, the first time I watched it, I had kind of only been half watching it, so I was just like, I hope this whole show isn't going to be on Tatooine like Boba Fett was, but then I noticed that there's like a Hong Kong planet that has kind of Blade Runner vibes.
I thought that was supposed to be Coruscant, but I could be wrong.
Well, it could be Coruscant, but it could be somewhere else. Who knows?
Yeah. And Uncle Owen it's the same one for the prequels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew he was going to be in this one.
They brought him back. I didn't see Beru, but Uncle Owen for sure. Also, the first time I was watching it, I was at work, but I have been waiting for this trailer for like 5 years. So I waited until I had a second, and then I started playing it. And so I was watching it at work, and my principal of my school came in. He has this ability to come in at the one time I'm not doing things, so it looks like I'm never busy. And I was watching the trailer, and he like walks up to me and says, "Hey, Ari," and I'm like, "Hi, Star Wars, just a second." I've been waiting for this trailer for so long. And he goes, "Ooh, when does it come out?" So we were all there in that moment. But then just rewatching it now with my headphones in and actually paying attention to it, holy shit. Like, the Duels of the Fates, a friend of mine called it cheap, but with my headphones on and watching it happen, it was the right music. It was the right music to put in that trailer. I just loved every second of it.
No, the prequel music that they used is great. And I like that they don't show Vader because we know Vader's going to be in the show, but we don't know to what extent. And I would like them to keep that out of the previews. Let's just see it in the show.
But is having the breathing at the very end becoming kind of a cliche trope they do too much? Because I feel like we had that in something else. Yeah.
I feel like that was even in like the episode 3 trailer. Like they ended with a
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, that's the only part of it that bothered me is it felt like we've heard that, or, I guess what I'm thinking of actually now that it's coming into my brain is it's the trailer for The Rise of Skywalker. They just had the Emperor laugh. So it was the same exact, like, oh, we'll just end this with a noise that they know is this character.
Hey, remember this thing from the Star Wars?
Yeah. We don't even have to show it to you. It's so iconic. We just have to make the sound.
Of course, I mean, when you're doing an Obi-Wan Kenobi show, like, the entire thing is going to be nostalgia. It's kind of unavoidable.
Of course, yeah.
Because there's going to be nostalgia for the prequels, and because it is, like, on Tatooine setting up Episode 4, there's going to be nostalgia for Episode 4. You've got young Luke there. So the whole thing's nostalgia bait. And then they throw on the Rebel stuff on top.
I know. It's weird that the
prequels
prequels have been out for so long that they actually can have nostalgia. I mean, I've liked them for the last 20 years, and everyone else got on the bandwagon about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm not entirely sure what happened other than people didn't like the sequels. And so they were like, well, I guess I'll have to like one of these Star Wars things or I can't claim to be a Star Wars fan anymore. And so they suddenly liked the prequels.
It's weird how it doesn't feel like as much time has passed between when Episode 1 came out and now as when, like, the original trilogy came out, because, like, the original trilogy, I mean, they all came out before I was born. So
right.
I in my mind, it was just like they had been made a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So, like, when the new ones were coming out, I was just like, oh my God, it's been forever, when really it had been like 15 years between Jedi and The Phantom Menace.
Yeah. And so actually more time has passed because it's been 20, right? Because I think it came out in 2001. Does that sound right?
Well, Phantom Menace was 99.
99, okay. So even older than I thought.
Yeah, it was Episode 1 was 99, Episode 2 was 2002, Episode 3 was 2005. So yeah, it's
been a while. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm ready for it, but today we're going to talk about Star Trek. So today we are talking about the Dauphin, which is the 10th episode of Season 2. It first aired on the 20th of February, 1989. Ooh, 2 days before my sister was born. It was written by Scott Rubinstein and Leonard Miodonow, and it was directed by Rob Bowman.
So this is the episode where Wesley gets his first kiss.
It is. It is. I liked that bit. Wesley had a crush.
It's a little weird because the actress that they cast was like 10 years older than Will Wheaton, and Will Wheaton was 16.
Okay, good, because that was my first thought.
The basic plot is, and it is a very basic plot. They are picking up the leader of some other world who's been raised off in secrecy to like bring together warring tribes, and they're just transporting her to her homeworld. And in the meantime, because she's young and Wesley's young, they have a little teenage romance.
But really, on the inside, they're evil Ewok zombies.
Well, they're elastomorphs, as we find out. They're like shapeshifters. And actually, it turns out, like, I think their default form is what Wesley sees on the transport
pad. Is that what they were trying to imply? I wasn't sure.
Well, because remember when they're looking at the planet, so like, that's so inhospitable to humanoid life. How could anything live there? And I assume...
Because even the big zombie Ewok thing is still humanoid. It's bipedal at least, Do
you remember when they arrived to pick them up at first and they contact Anya? She asks, what species are you? Because she wants to know, okay, this is what we're going to look like when we beam up.
Yeah, she did. You're right.
But their default form is like some kind of like being of light or whatnot, which is kind of cool. Salia is her parents were like members of warring tribes that had a child that was meant to unite them all, but then the parents died and she was taken off in seclusion until she could come of age to rule the planet. Which was
one of 2 Romeo and Juliet references. The other one is when Wesley's up fixing something and Geordi's down talking to him, and the shot is Geordi looking up to Wesley like he's on a Juliet balcony. And I thought, okay, that can't be not on purpose. It has to be on purpose, right? Because we just had another reference to Romeo and Juliet like 3 minutes before that shot, But yeah, anyway. I don't know what I'm referencing, but my notes say, shut it, Billiam. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but...
Salia is being cared for by a woman named Anya, who is a psychopath.
Yeah, the vengeance demon.
Yeah, like she, she is extremely protective of Sully, and when it seems like Sully and Wesley are starting to have a thing, she's like, "Oh, you can't talk to that boy," and like she starts like touring the Enterprise, and any single problem that she sees, she's like, "Well, this won't do," and like Geordi's like, "I don't know, I'm just it's just routine maintenance on it. It's fine, nothing's broken." And it's like, "Well, how do you know?" Because the computer would tell us. Well, what if the computer's broke? She goes into like sick bay and sees that there's like they're treating a patient who has like a disease that is potentially contagious, but the ship's filtering systems take care of it. And she's like, "Well, that won't do. You have to kill him now."
I know. I loved that declaration. You must kill him now.
and Worf is just like, "Okay, I gotta fight this bitch now." And then she turns into a giant like bug-eyed Wookiee, which is one of two like Star Wars forms. She's got the little bug-eyed Ewok and the giant bug-eyed Wookiee. Those are her two monster forms.
Because that's what I was like, why is she now 6 feet tall? Because I did not realize that she was being made of pure light or whatever. I just thought that bugbear form was her regular form. You know?
That would be funny. She had one more form, which I don't recognize the actress, but you do. So go ahead. Talk about
my God. I was so mad she wasn't just Anya the whole time. It's Shelley from Twin Peaks. I was so excited because this would have been right before, or maybe right as she was really famous on Twin Peaks, because this, I said 1989, right? And I think that Twin Peaks came out in 1990. But Madchen Amick played Shelley on Twin Peaks, and I was so excited. It says in all capitals, Shelley is here in my notes, because Shelley was one of my favorite characters. And I was really mad when Anya just went back to the old lady form and never went back to being Madchen again. I was like, oh, I'm so sad. But yeah, I was really excited that she was here. I mean, at one point in the 90s, she would have been more famous than anybody else on that show, because how big Twin Peaks got when it first came out, you know?
This was like 2 years before Twin Peaks, so...
Yeah,
she
it's just interesting to me. Yeah, there's been so many of those random little actors. Like, we've seen Terry Hatcher, now we've seen Shelley. Like, it's interesting to me how many little actors you see, and you're like, oh, wow, I can't believe this person is on this Star Trek show, you know?
Well, and when I was looking at this episode, I was thinking, like, wasn't there another actress that Wesley had his first kiss with? And then I realized, no, it was her first on-screen kiss with him. Ashley Judd is going to be in like a fifth season episode where she kisses Wesley. And that's who I was thinking of. So that's another one that...
So I felt like that actress was way older than Wesley, and it made me uncomfortable from the beginning. So to hear that she was 10 years older, yeah, that just really, it makes me... Yuck.
Yeah, and Ashley Judd is like 4 years older than Will Wheaton. That's fine. That's not a big issue for me.
Right.
But yeah, 10 years, especially at that point, he's 16. That's a little creepy.
Mm-hmm. I know.
They should have cast a younger actor. But she kind of has a young look to her, like an innocence about her. And I think that's what they were going for when they cast her.
Yeah. I think so, too. But they could have gone with an actual teenager. This whole thing where they won't cast teenagers to play teenagers is so weird.
I know. Well, then they've got... Will Wheaton's a teenager, and he's a show regular. I don't get why they couldn't bring on another teenager for one episode.
I know. Like someone that's actually his age, you know?
I think there's probably an issue of that, in that it's harder to find teenage actors who are actually good.
True.
Will Wheaton is a child actor. Like, he was famous since before he was a teenager. So he's been doing this a while. And basically, unless you start out as a child actor, if you try and start out in your teens as an actor, I don't... And
then there's that awkward teenage phase, because you're kind of cute all through like 11 and 12. And then every human being goes through the 13 to 15-year-old awkward stage, or as I like to call it, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Because
or as I like to call it, the Macaulay Culkin syndrome.
Yes, or that. Yeah. I mean,
sometimes you never grow out of that awkward phase and you just become Macaulay Culkin.
Like Rupert Grint. He never really quite grew out of the awkward phase, but, Harry and Hermione went on to, be normal adult people. But I think it's weird because Boyhood, did you see that movie? Where they filmed it over 13 years or something like that. And it's the same actors through the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's not the best movie ever made because the kid is learning to act through his whole life. And then he goes through his awkward phase and everything. But it's so cool to watch. Like, you watch Patricia Arquette grow old. You watch Ethan Hawke grow old. you watch the actors in the movie grow old, and they're not the best actors. You're right. And so that's probably what it is. There's the awkward teenage phase combined with, if you weren't an actor as a child, you're not going to have the experience that causes people to always like cast 25 plus year olds to be teenagers, plus probably labor laws, right?
Yeah, because I think what are the child labor laws in Hollywood? I know they have to make special exemptions just because in most places, if you're 12, you cannot do a job, but obviously they have exceptions.
Well, isn't this why they used to work with twins a lot? Was because they could use one for 4 hours and then use the other one for 4 hours or whatever.
That's why they went with the Olsen twins for one character. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And no, they played twins. I was going to say Jack and Cole Sprouse played twins on Full House as well, but they were actually twins.
Yeah, but they were like, well, everyone knows the Olsen twins are twins, so why don't we capitalize on the twinness of it and get some other twins on the show?
Right, yeah. I was going to say, plus then it shows that it runs in the family, but Michelle's not a twin. So that doesn't work.
Wesley, when he sees her in the hallway at first, he's just like immediately smitten, and he's just
Twitter-pated.
Like, who was that? Oh, wow. And then
what is that?
And like, Geordi notices that he's like distracted while working on the warp core, and he's like, "All right, come down from there. You're love struck. I understand. I was your age once. I've dealt with that, but you're gonna be of no use here, and you're gonna blow up the ship. So come on down." And then Wesley's like,
"Stop spraying that laser into that computer, kid."
and Wesley's like, "Well, how do I talk to her?" And I'm like, "Kid, don't ask Geordi. Do not ask Geordi for advice on women."
Well, his advice was to say, "Hi, I'm Wesley Crusher, and I'd like to talk to you." That was his entire advice. Yeah.
That's not horrible advice, but like, I'm just thinking, we haven't really seen it yet, but Geordi is really terrible with women. Like, it's kind of like a running joke that he's just really bad at like getting dates and stuff like that. So I'm just thinking, don't ask Geordi for advice. But then he goes to like Worf and Data, and like that's even worse because Worf is just.
The way they cut it to like just go straight to him screaming, like from talking to Geordi to like you hear this like happening. You're like, oh my God, what's happening? And then it like pans over to Worf's face and he's screaming. And then he's like, so that's how you attract women? He's like, no, men do not roar, women roar.
And hurl heavy objects. He's like, well, what do the men do? He reads her love poetry.
Right. So I'm trying to imagine this whole scene. Like, okay, so there's a Klingon man just having to sit in a chair, smoking a pipe, reading some love poetry. And then there's a Klingon woman in the corner screaming and throwing things in his general direction. Like this mating ritual, I'm really having a hard time wrapping my head around. I think I messaged you that I needed an adult because it was the look on Worf's face. Like he had this look like, and then she throws things.
Well, you could tell Wesley's as soon as Wesley leaves, like just the look on Worf's face is like, Worf, do you need to get this out with some Klingon calisthenics?
Yeah, go to the holodeck, maybe.
And then like. Oh, and then Data is talking about, like, he just kind of breaks it down into, like, well, you look very biologically compatible with her because you both have similar forms, but there might be some genetic... And he's like, Data, I'm not trying to dissect her. I'm trying to talk to her.
I have no idea what this is from, but it reminded me of this joke that I heard once. And I can't remember what it's from, and it's probably from some dumb movie or something, but, like, someone's, like, setting up their bedroom to get ready to, like... seduce the woman that they're into, and they've put candles everywhere, and someone walks in and goes, are you trying to f*** her, or are you trying to burn her alive? And it reminded me of that because I was like, all these people are giving him this terrible advice, and I love that Wesley's response to Worf isn't to like shame him or anything. He's like, yeah, that sounds like it works out real great for Klingons.
Then he goes to 10 forward to ask Riker for advice, and Riker brings over Guinan, and they're like, all right, here's how it would go. And then they completely ignore Wesley and start flirting with each other in front of him. And like at some point Wesley's just like, I don't think this is my style. And Guinan's like, shut up, kid. Tell me more about myself.
I know, and at first when he called her the most beautiful woman in the galaxy, I thought, oh, Guinan's not going to go for this. And then he kept going, and then she kept like right back at him or whatever, and it was like, oh no, what am I watching? Why does this feel so uncomfortable to watch?
No, it was great. I loved it. Obviously the words they are saying to each other are awful dialogue, but they sell it so well, and you can tell they're having fun with it. They're very clearly doing this to tease Wesley.
Right. You're the heart in my day and the soul in my night. I want some Thalian chocolate mousse, though.
Oh, yeah.
400-year-old aged cocoa beans.
They replicate it, and she takes like one bite and then like sets it back on the replicator pad.
I know. She's like, oh, this is so good. Sets it down. And then Wesley's like, you know what I can do? I can show you the world. And then they have an Aladdin montage.
You the world. Yeah. And hey, it's we got some like actual like good alien landscapes, because he takes her to the holodeck to show her all these planets that she's never seen.
That was
cool. And instead of using the season 1 TOS set, they actually do some really cool matte paintings and cool compositing work. Like they're standing on an asteroid and they're looking at other asteroids and everything, and it actually looks
really
good.
Cool looking. Yeah.
It was like, I was sitting here, I'm like, this is a lot of budget for kind of a nothing episode that's just there for like Wesley to have a romance. Like I would have saved that money for like a better episode, because I didn't really find much to this one, but I was impressed with the visuals.
Yeah, I thought the visuals were cool.
Of course, not all the visuals were the greatest, because those the different monster forms that Anya took were those
pretty
looked
awful.
like TOS costumes.
Yeah, they did. I like how when Salia, I think Salia, right?
Yeah.
When Salia turns into hers and she's like a ginger one, like she's red haired. I was like, oh, so that's why I thought that was their true form, because they both morphed into it or whatever. And the only time we ever see Salia change is into that form, other than at the end. So I was thrown off by that. And I had a big critique about how the evil zombie Ewok thing had a mouth, so it made no sense that their language was chittering noises. But now that we know that it's a being of pure light or whatever, we know for sure that the chittering is probably because they don't have mouths, I kept trying to figure out who the lady was, the one playing Anya. She's just one of those ladies that's been in everything for like 50 years until she died. Mm-hmm. Like she's been in a ton of stuff all the way to black and white movies. I thought as I was watching her, I was like, is that the Mother Superior from Sound of Music? Kind of reminded me of her. So I was looking at her IMDb, and she's just been in so much stuff, like random bits here, random bits there, that she probably just is a face I know from seeing her all over TV. Mm-hmm. The holodeck would be a really cool place to have a holodate, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
but like, what cool way to go on a date, though, right? Like, yeah, you could literally go anywhere.
You don't need reservations. You can go to the swankiest joint in like Paris or whatnot just by telling the computer. Yeah. And the maitre d' will be, I have your seat right this way, sir.
So then she gets upset after she turns into the giant ginger.
Yeah, he turns a little racist there. And like, I can understand like initial shock, like, oh, I thought you just looked like that, but apparently you can just change your form. And like, I can understand a little apprehension over somebody who could just turn into anything. Like, well, what is your true form? But like,
right.
He like starts questioning whether she even has like real feelings, and she's like, no, I
know.
Like, she's like, no, like I may look different, but like I'm still me. I feel things just the same way that you do. It was obviously, it's not meant to be, because she is supposed to rule a planet, and even though like she's feeling regret because there's all these things that Wesley has seen that she never will get to see, because she probably will never get to leave this planet once she's there to rule it. It's
right.
A busy life, being a monarch or whatever the leadership structure on that planet is.
Yeah, it seems like because they sent her off to mature, right, on a different planet so that she wouldn't get murdered or whatever, while we waited for her to come back, and because her parents died right away, like a couple years into her life. Yeah, she's got a real, this was her one little adventure before she goes, off to rule forever. And I don't know, I had compassion for her, but I also was like, well, you're the ruler. You can change how things go a little bit, I guess. I don't know. We didn't get enough of the actual planet, when her job was going to be to like fully understand why she would never ever get to see the rest of the universe.
There was a really good scene in this at the end when Wesley, after she has beamed off and Wesley's like, just drowning his sorrows in 10 forward, and Guinan shows up to, give him a shoulder to cry on, and she is not dismissive of his feelings, even though he's a teenager, and because she realizes, well, just because you're a kid doesn't mean those feelings aren't real, and he's, even though he only knew this girl for a couple days, he's like, I'm never gonna feel about the same way about anyone else, and Guy's like, yeah. You're not going to. Because
all love is different. I thought that was such a cool... Because it is. Every single time you meet someone new, sure, you go through that same, falling in love, getting to know them kind of thing. But every time it is slightly different. It was very smart. Very interesting writing. Then actually at the bottom of my notes for this episode, it just says Guinan surrounded by hearts. So I must have just been happy with what she said there. Oh, I forgot one thing to say about Anya, though. She was the uncredited voice of Gozer in Ghostbusters.
Oh, interesting.
That was the one cool thing I found out about her. She was the voice. So now we're going to talk about Contagion, which is the 11th episode of the second season. It aired on the 20th of March, 1989. And it was written by Steve Gerber and Beth Woods and directed by Joseph L. Scanlon.
There was a couple episodes, actually at the beginning of season 2, they had mentioned a sister ship, the Yamato, that they thought they saw, but it was just an illusion by Nagilum. Well, this time we actually get to see it.
I was trying to remember where I knew the name from. And so I hadn't quite placed it. I was like, I know that name.
It's also, it's named for Battleship Yamato, which is an anime.
Oh, okay.
But of course, we only see the Yamato for about 2 minutes because it explodes pretty much right away.
Yeah.
There's there was a line right at the beginning when they're going to rendezvous with the Yamato. Picard asks Wesley what the ETA to rendezvous is, and Wesley says 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Do you recognize that reference?
It sounds familiar, but no.
There is a piece of music by John Cage called 4:33, and it is 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence.
Oh.
The idea is to have it in a full orchestra in a concert hall and have the conductor read out the beats, but nobody plays anything, and the music is just like the ambience of it. So it's kind of just a meme reference, but I am pretty sure that for them to pick exactly 4 minutes and 33 seconds, it was just I'll throw in a reference to John Cage.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Turns out they're able to download the Yamato's logs before it blew up, and they find out that the Yamato has been investigating an ancient culture that had disappeared millennia ago called the Iconians.
Right.
The Yamato had actually found the Iconian homeworld in the neutral zone, and was risking violating the treaty with the Romulans to go there because the Yamato's captain was like, look, if the Romulans get there first, there's some technology here that they could use as a weapon. We can't risk them getting it. So Picard's like, all right, well, I guess we had better go there and investigate too. But all the while, they're noticing that ship systems are malfunctioning very much in the way that the Yamato's did when it blew up. And it's not to the degree that the Yamato was experiencing them.
The first one slower. Is that a door doesn't automatically open for Jean-Luc, for example.
Yeah. And then he orders tea Earl Grey hot for the first time in the show. Mm-hmm. That's the first time we get that line. And he gets a Janet cactus instead.
He does get a Janet cactus.
They're wondering, actually, if the Yamato might have been destroyed by a Romulan warbird. And as they approach Iconia, they are, in fact, greeted by a warbird that, decloaks. But when it tries to attack them, it actually seems like it's suffering from the same issues that the Enterprise is.
As soon as they said the phasers were locked on them, I was like, how do we know the computer isn't doing that, though? Because we know that our computer's malfunctioning. What if their computer's malfunctioning? As soon as they said phasers are locked on us, I was like, don't believe it. It's probably not worth believing.
There's actually a great scene where there's a probe that comes up from the Iconian planet when they get into orbit, and the Picard tells Geordi, I'm going to tractor it in so that we can study it, and Geordi's like, wait, no, but the computer malfunctions and he can't hail him, so he goes he runs over to the turbo lift, and like the turbo lift starts malfunctioning and sends him
He
flying
gets
all
thrown
over.
all around by himself. He's doing his own personal bridge roll or whatever it's called in the elevator.
And they do the trope where you knock the glasses off the blind dude. He has to
I know.
feel around on the ground for them. And actually, I noticed when he's running to the turbo lift, first he goes to like there's this one door in engineering that is actually an access hatch to like the Jeffries tubes, which are the little access tubes throughout the ship. And I was like, if you're in a rush, why is your first thought to climb 10 decks to the bridge instead of going to the turbo lift? I guess maybe because he was
afraid it was going to malfunction. That was my only thought, because later on they say that Pulaski isn't using the turbo lifts, and she's making everyone use the like secret tunnels. Yeah.
They Picard decides that he's going to lead the away team down to the planet, and Riker's like, we've had this conversation 100 times. I can't let you do that. And Picard's like, yeah, we're going to have this conversation more, but sorry, I've been studying the Iconians and archaeology since I was a Starfleet cadet. So I am the most qualified person on the ship to go lead it. And I kind of agree with him here. So he and Worf and Data go down to the planet, and they discover that the Iconians have like a gateway system, because they never used starships. There was like a rumor about them.
They would just magically appear on planets. Yeah.
Demons of air, and I don't remember exactly what the term was, but it was something like demons of air, because they would just appear. And so they find this gateway that just like cycles through different places that are clearly not on Iconia. And so it's like, oh, well, we could just walk through and go anywhere. And they even see one of the doorways actually opens up to the Enterprise. And you said...
where someone is walking by with a door or a wall piece, and I swear it looked like Data. But then later on, when Picard walks through the portal... when Worf and Data walk through the portal... that wall is still leaning up against the wall, so it wasn't a mistake. It was literally there on purpose. But I still don't understand the point of what we saw, where a guy who looked like Data picked up a part of the wall and moved it.
I don't know what the wall part was. I think the reason he looked like Data is because the gateway itself, I think it was slightly desaturated. And so
it made him look like the washed out kind of skin that Data has.
Yeah, I think that's probably
what it was. And it was somebody in the gold uniform.
Yeah. Also, we didn't explain why the ships were malfunctioning. It turns out that the Iconian probe, like the first one that contacted the Yamato, had sent an Iconian program that was overwriting the ship's computer and causing all the malfunctions. And when they downloaded the logs, they got the virus too. But because they didn't get it from the probe, it was limited just to like the section of the mainframe where they had downloaded the logs to. So it was taking a while to impact everything else. And the Romulan ship is impacted as well because they intercepted those logs.
Right. They weren't supposed to. So it showed they had been wrong, or they'd been doing naughty things they weren't supposed to, because they should not have had Starfleet logs.
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody was kind of poking around where they weren't supposed to this episode. So you couldn't really, it's like at one point, I think Picard asks the Romulan captain, what are you doing in the neutral zone? She's like, well, what are you doing in the neutral zone?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, okay. It's the Spider-Man pointing meme.
Yeah, exactly. I really was surprised we didn't see any random holodeck malfunction stuff happening, like maybe some random people running through the hallways in costumes or something. Because with it being a ship's computer malfunction episode, we just kind of sort of forgot the holodeck existed, which, always makes for interesting malfunction. So I was surprised we didn't see
I think when the holodeck malfunctions, that's always like the point of the episode.
The whole point. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you're going to have a ship's, something always goes wrong with the ship's computer, but if it affects the holodeck, then that's going to be the main thing, is people are locked in the holodeck and they have to get out with the,
get out.
Yeah. But because that wasn't the focus of the episode, I think they decided to just ignore it.
So Riker has this one line that says, "Fate protects fools, little children, and the Enterprise." And I literally had to stop it and back it up, because I said, did he say fate? Because it should have been luck. Luck helps fools, little children, and the Enterprise. Fate had nothing to do with any of that. It was a weird line, right?
I liked it.
Yeah. I don't know. Because what was fateful about what happened? Nothing.
I don't know.
Other than it just went their way. You know, it was, I don't know. Anyway, I'm just nitpicking Riker's lines, apparently.
One thing that I liked while they were down on the planet is they recognized some of the Iconian alphabet. They're like, this looks like another language that we've seen. And Data's like, yes, it also resembles this other one. And it kind of makes sense if the Iconians were like conquerors who were spreading from world to world, that, you know, their language would have been spread to other planets and
like Latin-based languages. Yeah, because English and Spanish, for example, are both Latin-based. You can't understand a Spanish person.
No, English is Germanic. I mean, we have a lot of Latin roots because of the.
Are we considered more Germanic than Latin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But we have most of our Latin words came from the Norman conquest of England, but we're primarily Germanic.
So is Spanish Germanic then too?
No, Spanish is Latin.
So that's why there's enough difference between the two that you can't understand each other, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't understand there's a lot of Germanic languages that aren't mutually understandable. Like, you can't understand German unless you speak German.
Right, that's true. Yes, it's a very different language than English, that's for sure. It just evolved a whole different way. I have at my work, there's a girl who speaks Spanish, and she helps me a lot with some of our multi-language families. Mm-hmm. And she can help with like Portuguese to the smallest bit too, because of this reason. Like, she knows Spanish, and they can communicate enough to understand each other, but not to like communicate. Yeah, and it's an interesting language barrier, you know.
There is some mutual compatibility, mutual intelligibility between a lot of the Romance languages. And I think Spanish and Portuguese are pretty closely related. Actually, I think Spanish and Italian are more closely related, but
sometimes I mistake things in Italian for Spanish because I'm very slowly learning Spanish. But and I'll hear something and I'll think, that sounds like Spanish, and it'll be Italian.
Yeah. When I was taking Spanish in high school, actually, there would be, I think I remember reading just like an entire paragraph in French, and I knew enough Spanish that I was actually able to figure out what, without having to go to Google Translate. I was like, this is what this is.
For me, what I've been trying to do with Spanish is we have a lot of multi-language families in our school, and Spanish is the most popular or the most common of the families that we have. And one of the things for me, learning vocabulary helps me understand what words are the same. Like computadora being computer. That means if I look at the kid and say, you know, do you have your computer? They're going to know what word I'm saying. So finding those like base words that are the same so that we can communicate with each other really helps. And that's exactly what Data did. He went in and he looked at those three languages and he found the commonalities to the point where he was able to interpret enough.
And actually what he did was basically he did a reconstructed language. Because we have a reconstructed language called Proto-Indo-European, which is the theoretical mother language of all of the Indo-European languages. I'm not sure exactly how they constructed it, how linguists constructed that in the real world, and I'm sure it probably doesn't one-to-one map onto the actual language spoken back then, but you know, just looking at common roots and when things branched off and everything, they were able to, you know, extrapolate back, and that's basically what Data does here. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I thought it was super cool too.
But then Data gets zapped by a console, and he's now infected with the virus too. And Brent Spiner does like a really good job of roboting. He just like starts having jerky motions, and his head is like locked to two axes when he's moving, and they do a cool effect with his voice. It sounds a little bit more robotic, but Picard's like, okay, so what we need to do is, Worf, you take Data through the doorway the next time the Enterprise is up, and I'm going to blow up the thing down here. And Worf's like, well, that'll kill you. And Picard's like, no, I'll go through the gateway. He's like, well, but you could end up anywhere. He's like, yeah, well, anywhere is going to be better than here in about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But they take Data back to the Enterprise, and they take him to engineering to study him, but then he like flatlines, like Geordi's like scanning him with the tricorder, and the tricorder even does it beep, like like he just died like a human or something. Geordi even does the thing where he like closes his eyes, and I was just like, yeah, no, he's not dead, he's rebooting. And it turns out that's the fix
to turn it on. Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Yeah, I know.
have worked in IT for a decade, and they didn't think to reboot the computer.
I know. I thought it too. I felt like some IT nerd probably wrote this episode.
I know it was the 80s. I know not everyone used computers yet, but
back then, restarting was even more important than it is now for fixing problems.
Oh, yeah. God, I remember Windows 95. If you let that thing run for more than 8 hours at a time, it was just like completely unusable.
At my first job where I had a computer every day, we had to shut it down at the end of the day. They wanted us to turn it off when we left. So that in the morning when we came in, it wouldn't just sit there drawing power, running the fans, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it turned out that all they had to do was shut off the Enterprise and reboot it, and then that fixed the whole problem.
Yeah. So and Picard goes, he sets the thing up to blow up, and then he walks through the doorway, which actually puts him on the Romulan ship. And
they had foreshadowed that, because when they were flipping through like the different places, I saw the Romulan ship go by once, and I was like, oh, interesting. I wonder if that's going to come back into play.
And it turns out that their malfunctions are so bad that like there's an auto destruct going on. And the captain, she's like, well, I can't disable the auto destruct, but at least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing that you go with me. But then right then they've like the Enterprise has a lock on Picard, so they beam him up, and he's just like, appears not today. But
goodbye. Yeah.
And then they're like, they're going to be like, okay, let's get out of here before everything blows up. And they're like, no, let's be nice to the Romulans and tell them just to reboot their computer, and then we'll get out of here.
and then we'll get out of here.
I really liked this episode. I thought it had a lot going on. And
I liked the second half. The first half, I was kind of like meh about. The second half, it got good. But like the first half, I was like, I don't even know. Like I don't have any notes really, because it was just happening and there wasn't a lot going on. But once the ship starts malfunctioning, which I think is like about 2/3 or 1/3 of the way through, or maybe half the way through, then it gets really interesting. And you get to see them try to like figure out what's going on with the computer. The part where Data gets possessed, or not possessed, but it's rewriting his code or whatever. Yeah. I thought was really well done. Like you said, Brent Spiner did a really good job of like playing a computer that's being shut down, or like being taken over or whatever. There was a perfect opportunity for a 2001 reference that they did not take, but that's okay.
They weren't consulting you at the time.
I know, because like it reminded me of when he's pulling the things out of hell and he starts singing Daisy, Daisy. And so I kind of expected it to maybe go down that route, but he just kind of conked over at one point, Her Romulan outfit was really ugly. The captain's, it was so ugly.
They're wearing like these giant square quilts. I've always hated the TNG Romulan outfits. They look awful. Remember those robes that were popular in the 80s? My great grandma would wear them, where it was like they were really scratchy on the inside, but they were like quilted. Mm-hmm. That's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of my great grandma's robe from the 80s, which is the most uncomfortable piece of fabric I've ever touched. And then I see it on her and I'm like, wow, that looks uncomfortable. Like, I don't know. I hated it. So the Romulans, you said, are related to the Vulcans? Yep.
But not to the Klingons?
No.
Even though they look like they're half Vulcan, half Klingon?
Well, the forehead ridge is actually, that was added in TNG. In the original series, they looked just like Vulcans. And they've actually, since then, we've seen Romulans that look just like Vulcans and some that have the ridges. And I think in Star Trek Picard, they actually explain that it's like people who live in the north on Romulus have the V shape on their forehead. But I think they added it in TNG just as a way to have a visual distinction between Vulcans and Romulans, a little more. But I assume it's just an evolutionary branch that happened after they left Vulcan.
There was some good lines about colonialism, like the victors invariably write the history to their own advantage. Mm-hmm. Was a scathing, condemnation of America, if you take 2 seconds to think about it. But like it was, I've started to notice this kind of anti-colonialism. Isn't that the whole point of the Prime Directive, to not go out and colonize all these planets is to go out and respect their autonomy and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's really early in like the world, 1989, right? For them to have this stance. It's very progressive. And it's good to see. I like seeing it, you know?
Well, and even like because the Iconians had been considered conquerors, but the Iconians were all wiped out. I mean, like the planet's dead. Nobody lives there anymore because other people came to destroy them. So
But they didn't. They escaped through the portal, they think.
Well, some of them might have. They don't know for sure.
Yeah. So they never really explained the science behind the portal, right? Because they just...
They didn't need to. It works.
Yeah, because they say something like we would see magic to people from 400 years ago or whatever, which is true. I just guess I wanted to know if they had some sort of explanation for it, especially for why they could see into the Romulan ship and the Enterprise.
Worf commented on how this could be like a military installation, but even then, like Picard's like, or Picard and Data are like, no, this nothing here seems like military in origin. This seems more like it would be a transporter room.
Yeah, he did make that comment.
The implication there is that the Iconians might have been more benevolent than it would seem, but maybe, I don't know, people just didn't trust that you could be an alien species that could just show up at any point.
Right.
It was like 200,000 years ago, so who knows? Anything could be true about them.
So this is the 11th episode of season 2. So I feel like I've got kind of like my feet under me with season 2. And I've got to say, have you noticed that so many more of the episodes have less women in them? Because we've lost Bev and we've lost Tasha. And so we don't have those two to focus on. And where's the Deanna focus? Like, they just pretend she doesn't exist. She's there to nod her head and say, yes, they seem agitated. And that's about the only role she has anymore. I'm hoping that's going to get fixed.
And Pulaski barely does anything.
I know. At first they gave her a couple, like, she was prominent because they were like, here's the new doctor or whatever. And now she's just off in sickbay, being sickbay, and it's become the Riker, Picard, Worf data show. You know, and I know it's going to get fixed because I know there's other episodes that star the women, but I just have noticed now that we're 11 episodes in, it's like I miss the fact that there was more women in the first season and more focus on the women. You know what I mean?
The problems with Deanna are never really going to go away. The writers never really figured out what to do with her, so she's kind of a disappointing character.
Okay.
I'd say probably the best writing I have seen for her was in Star Trek Picard season 1, which is weird because that season I didn't like very much, but I thought the episode with her was actually phenomenal. And there's good Troy episodes in TNG. There's just not that many of them.
Okay. And Bev will come back and she'll be part of the crew again. Yeah. I noticed that Guinan is having to pick up the momming duties when it comes to Wesley. Because after the Dauphin leaves, like she's the one that's having to like, you know, pat, it's okay. There will be other loves in the world or whatever. And it's like so weird that this kid doesn't have a mom, you know, or a dad on the show. On the ship. And it's a little weird. So I know that Bev's going to come back and I know that's going to happen. And like you said, I've been trying to give Pulaski more like grace because I know she's not here forever, you know? But at the other hand, like I find, because at least once in episode, I find myself thinking, I miss Tasha or I miss Bev or I miss Deanna. And I'm like, wait, Deanna's still here. You know, like it just feels like we're not using those, you know, it feels like there's, for me, someone who relates to the female characters more, it feels different than the first episode, but it's easy to ignore because the writing, or the first season, but it's easy to ignore because the writing is so much better.
That's, I think, just kind of a problem with TNG in general. And, you know, it's a product of the times. There are less female characters and they get less of a focus. I think Deep Space Nine probably has much stronger women characters on that show. I've
heard so many good things about DS9. I'm assuming that when we finish TNG, we'll just keep sliding on into DS9, right?
Yeah,
I think.
I'd love to.
Yeah, because I've just heard so many good things about it. I think that's everything on this episode for me, though. I don't really think I have anything to... Oh, I thought it was hilarious that the guy was like, that's not medicine, when she told him to make a split.
I wanted to bring that up, yeah, because nothing's working in sickbay either, and he's like trying to mend somebody's like broken bone, and she's just like, oh, we'll just make a splint, and he's like, make a what? And I'm like,
when she explains what it is, he's like, that's not medicine.
That's barbaric. And I'm just like, can Starfleet Medical maybe teach people things that are
like
in fact
the history
basic
of medicine? Like, I don't know. It seems like in 400 years in the future, you'd have to at least take 1 or 2 history of medicine classes.
Like, what happens when you crash your shuttle on a planet and you don't have access to a world-class sick bay and you have to make do? Like,
I know.
You should know basic medicine, basic techniques.
Okay, well, I think that's it for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
And until next time,
live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at Rest Both Worlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.